All rise and shout. It's time for What's Trending. Power 5 aplenty for BYU football as they move into the Big 12. 10 Power 5 games on the 2023 slate, the most ever, obviously with BYU making the jump up in competition. With that said, Brett McMurphy, friend of the program, reported earlier this week that the Big 10 is, quote, strongly considering removing its requirement for league teams to play a Power 5 non-conference team annually beginning in 2024, sources told Action Network HQ. Of note, he continues, in 2024, USC and UCLA joined the Big 10 the same year the college football playoff expands to 12 teams. So the Big 12, as of 2015, Jarom, has a requirement for Power 5 non-conference games, at least one annually. If the Big 12 were to adopt this same potential change as the Big 10 conference, would you be okay with BYU not scheduling Power 5 non-conference games moving forward?
I have argued in the past that the schedule's too tough, so I could see an argument, certainly from myself, that, yeah, I'd be fine with that, with no P5s. But I love BYU versus Utah way too much. I want that at least 6 out of 10 times, in a decade. So, no, I don't think I'm okay with this. If BYU gets to the point where they're, consistently kind of 1 or 2 in the Big 12, and you're competing for an actual playoff spot, which you've got to probably be in the top 2 in the Big 12 to qualify. I don't think a third team from the Big 12 will rarely get into the expanded playoff. I think that's more of an SEC Big 10 thing. Then perhaps you need to eliminate one potential loss with a Power 5 game in non-conference. But given where BYU's at and where it's kind of been in philosophy and production on the field, I think a game is fun and needed for the fan base. So BYU and Utah needs to happen. And then there's a couple of games that I think are fun that replace that. Tom Homo has told us before, there will be some years where Utah doesn't want to play us because they're playing somebody else. See last year and this year with Florida.
Yep.
And then, BYU, Tom said, it will have some years where it won't play Utah because it has a game that it likes. So looking ahead at the Power 5 schedule, according to FBschedules.com, of course, at Arkansas this year, no Utah. At Utah, then Utah the next 2 years. 26, you got to cancel one of these. Arizona, and at Utah, you cancel Arizona. 27, at Arizona, Utah, you probably cancel at Arizona. 28, you have Ole Miss in 28 and 29. That's one where I go, you don't need Utah. Let's do a home and home with, or home and road, as I say, with Ole Miss. 2030, at Utah, Virginia Tech. Is Virginia Tech a big enough deal at home to not play Utah? We'll see. 2031, Stanford. You can get rid of Stanford, play Utah. 2032, Michigan State. You host Michigan State. That's a return game that was supposed to happen in 2020, by the way. It's been pushed out to 2032.
12 years.
I'm okay with Michigan State at home instead of Utah. At Virginia Tech, 2033. Again, that goes to the 30. Do we do the home and road with Virginia Tech?
I would love BYU to play in Blacksburg.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be a fun series,
Yeah, Enter
right?
Sandman. Let's go. 2035, Missouri. Is that a return game from 2015 that was supposed to happen, I think, in 2020?
It was supposed to happen in 2020, yeah.
2035, I have no plans for 2035 at the moment, and I don't know that BYU needs this at this point. I would like BYU to play a Power 5 game in non-conference. And again, this is a stretch. We're just saying if other Power 5 conferences went this direction, and we don't even know if the Big 10 will, but it might be in the best interest of those leagues not to, if you're trying to make that expanded playoff. Although it can strengthen your argument to perhaps get in where you might not have. And in this situation, BYU probably needs to have 1 or 2 losses to get in. I don't see very often or at all a 3-loss non-Big 10 SEC team getting that kind of 5th or 6th or whatever, 7th at large. I think BYU really needs to be in the 1-loss and 2-loss situation. And if they get to the point where BYU is good enough, then I could see the argument where it's like, yeah, what's the point of a Power 5 in non-conference? We already have 9 in league.
Well, it depends on the quality of the Power 5 opponent that you schedule in non-conference. I think
BYU's not going to go with a weakling, though. It's either Utah or a really good one.
Well, they can control that a little bit, can't they now? They can, if they don't want to play a really strong Power 5, they wouldn't have to under the context
BYU's had
of this.
too much hubris not to. You know what I mean?
Maybe
if we're going to do a good
one. Maybe they pull it back.
When has BYU pulled it back?
Well, they haven't been in this situation, so I feel like they're turning a page to a place where they might.
What evidence do we have that they would do that?
Well, it's hard. We have to see what they do when they go into the Big 12. Like, now it would make perfect sense to make that change and do something that they have never done before, and they don't let their hubris get in the way.
And it's a good hubris. Like, no, we can handle it. It's like, well, let's see if BYU can. Like, what's the point? The point is to win.
I'm glad that Tennessee went away because BYU would have been playing Tennessee and Arkansas this year and 11 Power 5 games. That's too many. It would have been fun to have Tennessee in Provo for sure.
I'd rather have that than at Arkansas.
But this was a favor to Arkansas, who came to Provo last year. And so now it's like, well, we held up our end of the bargain. You got to come play in Fayetteville now.
Notre Dame did not.
BYU got paid by Tennessee to cancel the game and move into a situation where we are now. I feel like it's better, but the point remains, this is first and foremost not an ultimatum. And the way that some people are responding to this on Twitter is, oh my gosh, there's never going to be another non-conference Power 5 game for a Big Ten team. And it's like, no.
It's May 12th. We're making up a topic.
They're just taking away the requirement. Like, you don't have to.
They're not even doing it.
You don't have to. You can still. These teams could go and schedule 3 Power 5 teams in their non-conference schedule if they want. There's just no requirement. Clearly, like, it's not an ultimatum. Even if BYU opts for, a few years scheduling 3 group of 5 teams or an FCS and 2 group of 5 teams, it doesn't mean that they won't ever schedule Utah again. Maybe the years that they don't have Utah, BYU does opt to lighten up the schedule a little bit. I don't think that they will do that. I feel like BYU will still schedule at least 1 Power 5 team.
Yeah.
But that goes back to your original point of, well, who is that Power 5 opponent?
It's got to be compelling.
How difficult of an opponent is that?
BYU already canceled a series with Miami, just for reference.
Yeah.
Because you're going to play max 1 a year.
So if BYU, they could schedule 2 Power 5s. Like I said, any team they can control what they want to control in the non-conference.
Yeah, they know.
But I feel like BYU will at most schedule 1 Power 5, and if it's Utah, fantastic. You said you want it 6 out of 10 years. I think that's a good number. If it's 8 out of 10 years, I'm okay with that too. And losing a game to Utah is not going to cost BYU in a 12-team college football playoff. Yes, there's less room for error if you do lose that non-conference Power 5 game, but it's not going to ultimately cost you. BYU
any of those losses could cost you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. BYU's, you're adding a little bit more weight to the bar. You like to utilize that, analogy for sure when you're talking about how difficult the schedule is. But losing a non-conference game to a Power 5 team, whether it's Utah or somebody else, is not going to cost you a chance to compete and play in the 12-team college football playoff.
Not in that moment.
It could elevate you as well.
Well, if you go 10-2 and you're out, you go, well, one of those 2 losses cost us.
But if you win that game,
it could help you.
And then you lose a game late in conference, where it's like, well, body of work, they had a really strong win in non-conference against said good team, then it brings you kind of back up. So
hopefully, and you never know too. Like Utah could stink soon. Ole Miss could stink soon. You never know.
I don't want the BYU-Utah series to go away. Like, there are people who are like, good, get rid of the Power 5 requirement. We don't ever want to see them again. Like, I want
still mad about the non-invite to the Pac-12?
Maybe, yeah. There's some petty and vindictive behavior there.
Absolutely.
No, I want BYU and Utah to play. And like I said, I think 6 out of 10 is fun. I wouldn't be opposed to only missing 2 years every decade. There are some people that are like, nah, let's just do it every other year. Fine.
It's going to be more than 2, I think, based on Tom's comments. Because Utah, in a decade, is going to choose at least 1 home and road series, I think.
Well, Utah has chosen 2.
Right?
They chose Michigan in 2014 and 15, and now Florida last year and this year.
Yeah, and 15 ended up being a bowl game, so it was only 3 instead of 4 years. And then for BYU, there'll be at least a series a decade. So it may be only 4 times out of 10. Who knows? It depends on both. And there is some posturing in that between the two of like, well, actually, we value this series more than playing you, so bye. And BYU typically has taken like the high road in all of these. When is BYU going to be the sort of enforcer in that conversation? Like with Notre Dame, it made sense to go to Vegas. We love playing in Vegas, like we talked about. That was like the best case scenario. I know people were upset that Notre Dame didn't go to Provo. Sorry, what was BYU going to do about it? Did BYU have the Four Horsemen and Rudy and Joe Montana? No, I didn't. No, they touchdown Jesus. We don't even have touchdown Jimmer. Like one day we'll have touchdown Jimmer or something. I don't know. BYU and Utah need to still happen. Again, we're just throwing out an idea on May 12th. Trying to stir it up a little bit, right? But that would be fun to continue to play a compelling non-conference game. But if BYU is if there was a season, Spence, where BYU went 10-2 in the regular season and lost like the conference championship game and didn't get in, we would be like, oh, this would have been the year the G5 game would have been nice. But you play.
Assuming they lost the non-conference Power 5 game is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
If you went like 10-2 and you were 2-1 in non-conference, and then you were like 8-1 in conference play, and you went to the Big 12 title game and you had the shot, but you were the first out, like we would be like, oh, schedule too tough at the beginning. But also like this is BYU. The DNA is we get after it. We're the underdog. We try and prove the world wrong. Like that's the DNA of this place. Is no one thought we could win in '84. No one thought we could produce a Heisman. No one thought we could like go to Independence and make it work. No one thought we'd ever get the Power 5 in. But here BYU is, right? So now it's time for BYU to musk up and enter the Big 12. And I don't see a time where BYU chooses not to play a Power 5 team. In non-conference. Blaine Fowler said that he wouldn't mind BYU not playing a Power 5 game at one point. And that makes sense depending on your goals, right? Right now, I don't think BYU's like number one aim and mission, realistically, is win the Big 12. It's like get in and compete well. To me, that's like the first couple years. Then you get to the point where you're like, all right, let's go compete for a Big 12 title. And if that means we still play a Power 5 team, and it's probably Utah most of the time, yes, I don't want being in a Power 5 and an expanded playoff to ruin the rivalry with Utah. To me, I don't want anything to ruin the rivalry with Utah. I want that to stay forever, 6 out of 10 years at a time.
Any coach and player is going to tell you that the goal is always to win a conference championship, but I understand what you are saying from a realistic stepping stone standpoint.
Yeah, BYU's not competing for a conference championship this year.
If BYU had a winning record in the Big 12 in year one, that would be a massive success.
5-4, we'd take right now.
If they had a winning record in year one, okay, and hey,
and sustain it.
You go 2-1 in non-con. Now you're 7-5, going to a nice bowl game, and you had a solid first opening campaign in the Power 5. But coaches and players are like, no, we're ready to compete for the conference championship right now.
They should. I'm not the one throwing passes. Okay, we're just talking. That's easier.
Our question.